Sarah's thumb hovered over the screen, frozen mid-scroll. The coffee cup slipped from her other hand, ceramic exploding against the kitchen floor in a symphony of destruction that barely registered. Her eyes remained locked on the Instagram post, a stranger's vacation photo from a beach resort in Mexico. 37 likes, posted 2 hours ago. But it wasn't the pristine sand or azure water that stopped her world. It was the boy in the background, maybe 14 now, dark hair catching the sunlight as he built a sandcastle with meticulous care, the same methodical way Tommy used to stack his blocks over and over, creating perfect towers before knocking them down with delighted squeals. 12 years. 12 years since she'd turned away for 30 seconds in Costco, reaching for the industrial-sized peanut butter on the top shelf. When she'd looked back, Tommy's small hand was no longer gripping the shopping cart. The red polo shirt she'd dressed him in that morning had vanished into the warehouse maze of bulk groceries and fluorescent lighting. "Mum, you okay?" Her daughter Emma appeared in the doorway, now 16 and beautiful in the way that made Sarah's heart ache. A daily reminder of all the birthdays, all the milestones she'd missed with her son. Sarah's hands trembled as she screenshot the image. "I need to call Detective Morrison." "Mum, no." Emma's voice carried the weary patience of someone who'd watched her mother chase shadows for over a decade. "We talked about this with Dr. Chen. The facial recognition apps, the age progression photos you keep making. This is different." Sarah zoomed in on the boy's face, studying the curve of his jaw, the way his left eyebrow sat slightly higher than his right. "Look at his hands, Em. Look how he builds." Emma moved closer, her expression softening from frustration to concern. The boy in the photo was constructing an elaborate sand fortress, each wall precisely aligned, each tower exactly the same height. It was architectural in its perfection, obsessive in its detail. "Thousands of kids build sandcastles, Mom." But Sarah was already clicking through to the poster's profile. Jessica Martinez, 34, lifestyle blogger from Phoenix. Her feed was a carefully curated collection of morning lattes, workout selfies, and aspirational quotes overlaid on sunset photos. Sarah scrolled frantically through months of posts until she found more photos from the same trip. There, 3 more images with the boy visible in the background, always alone, always building. In one photo, he was creating an intricate pattern in the sand with shells and stones, his face scrunched in concentration. In another, he sat apart from other hotel guests, methodically arranging smooth pebbles by size and color. Sarah's breath caught. She knew that expression, had watched it 1,000 times as 3-year-old Tommy organized his toy cars, by color, then by size, then by color again, becoming distressed if anyone disrupted his system. Her phone buzzed, a text from her ex-husband David. "Emma told me you found another photo. Please don't do this to yourself again." The divorce had been final 8 months after Tommy disappeared. The statistics were brutal. 90% of marriages don't survive the loss of a child. But Tommy wasn't lost, Sarah had insisted. He was taken. There was a difference, and that difference meant hope. Detective Morrison answered on the second ring. "Sarah, I was just thinking about you. How are you holding up?" "I found him, Ray. I found Tommy." A pause. She could picture him rubbing his temples, the same gesture he'd made countless times over the years, as Sarah brought him new leads, new possibilities, new heartbreak. "Tell me what you've got." Sarah walked him through the photos, her voice gaining strength with each detail. The boy's mannerisms, his solitary behavior, the obsessive building patterns that had defined Tommy's early childhood. "Have you considered that you might be seeing what you want to see?" Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. "The mind can play tricks. Run facial recognition. Please. What harm could it do?" "Sarah," Morrison sighed, "even if this boy resembles Tommy, you're talking about a child who's been living openly in Mexico for years. The kidnapping you're imagining, it doesn't fit any known patterns. International child trafficking typically involves—" "What if it wasn't trafficking?" Sarah interrupted. "What if it was something else entirely?" The question hung in the air. Over the years, the case had generated hundreds of theories: stranger abduction, family kidnapping, accidental death with body concealment, even the possibility that Tommy had simply wandered off and died in some hidden corner of the massive store. But Sarah had never stopped believing her son was alive, somewhere, growing up without her. "I'll make some calls," Morrison said finally. "Send me everything you have." After hanging up, Sarah sat in her kitchen, surrounded by coffee-stained case files and age progression photos that covered 12 years of hoping. Emma had cleaned up the broken mug and made fresh coffee, setting a cup beside her mother without comment. "What if it's really him?" Sarah whispered. Emma sat down across from her. "What if it's not?" The question they'd both been avoiding. What if, after 12 years of searching, Sarah finally had to accept that her 3-year-old boy was never coming home? What if this photo was just another false hope in an endless series of almosts and maybes? But something deeper than maternal instinct drove Sarah's certainty. The boy in the photos didn't just look like Tommy might look now. He moved like Tommy, thought like Tommy, existed in the world the way Tommy had existed, methodical, solitary, creating order from chaos. "I'm going to Mexico," Sarah said. "Mom, no. I have vacation days saved. I'll fly to Puerto Vallarta, find this resort, and then what? Approach a random family and accuse them of kidnapping? Get arrested for harassment?" Sarah stared at the photo again. In the background of Jessica Martinez's Perfect Vacation, a boy built castles in the sand while other children played in the surf. Alone, always alone, as if he belonged nowhere and everywhere at once. "Then I'll know," Sarah said quietly. "One way or another, I'll finally know." The resort was smaller than it appeared in the photos. A modest collection of pastel buildings clustered around a central pool. Sarah had been watching from the beachside bar for 3 days, nursing the same drink, while scanning every face, every family, every solitary figure walking the sand. On the 4th morning, she saw him. He emerged from the hotel around 9, carrying a plastic bucket and a collection of tools, not typical beach toys, but actual implements. A small trowel, a ruler, what looked like a compass. He walked with purpose toward the same stretch of beach featured in Jessica's photos. Sarah's heart hammered as she watched him begin to work. He measured distances with the ruler, marked points in the sand with shells, then began excavating with scientific precision. This wasn't play, it was engineering. She approached slowly, afraid he might bolt like a wild animal. As she drew closer, she could see his face clearly for the first time. The resemblance was striking, but 12 years had changed everything and nothing. The baby fat was gone, replaced by sharp cheekbones and serious eyes. But the concentration, the careful way he moved his hands, that was purely Tommy. "That's beautiful work," she said in English, then repeated herself in broken Spanish. The boy looked up startled. His eyes were brown, not the blue she remembered, but contact lenses could explain that. Or maybe her memory was faulty. 12 years was a long time. Gracias, he said, then switched to accented English. I am building a water collection system for irrigation. Sarah's knees nearly buckled. Tommy had always been fascinated by water, spending hours in the bathtub, experimenting with cups and funnels, understanding fluid dynamics in ways that amazed his preschool teachers. I'm Sarah, she managed. What's your name? Diego. That's a nice name. Do you remember having any other names? When you were little? The boy's expression shifted, confusion flickering across his features. I don't understand. Diego, I think... Sarah stopped herself. This was insane. She was interrogating a child based on a resemblance and wishful thinking. Never mind. Your irrigation system is very impressive. But as she turned to leave, Diego spoke again. Sometimes I dream about a big store with very tall shelves and bright lights. There's a woman calling for someone, but I can't find her. Sarah spun around. What woman? I don't know. She has light hair like yours. She seems sad. Diego's face scrunched in concentration. The dream started after we moved here. Before that, I lived with my aunt in Guadalajara. She said my parents died in a car accident when I was small. The beach seemed to tilt around Sarah. What's your aunt's name? Elena Vasquez, but she got sick last year and couldn't take care of me anymore. The resort owner, Senor Herrera, he lets me stay here in exchange for odd jobs. I'm good with my hands. Sarah's phone buzzed with an urgent text from Detective Morrison. Facial recognition came back. 94% probability match. We're contacting Mexican authorities. Where are you? Diego, Sarah said carefully. I think there's something we need to talk about. The truth unraveled slowly, then all at once. Elena Vasquez had been more than just a cleaner at the Costco where Tommy disappeared. She'd been the woman Sarah passed in the peanut butter aisle, the one who'd smiled at Tommy and commented on his red shirt in accented English. Security footage from that day showed Elena leaving through a service entrance with what appeared to be a sleeping child hidden under a maintenance cart's canvas covering. But the deeper investigators dug, the more complex the story became. Elena's own son had died in a drowning accident just weeks before Tommy's disappearance. Hospital records showed she'd been receiving treatment for severe depression and had recently stopped taking her medication. The psychiatrist's notes painted a picture of a woman lost in grief, convinced that saving another child could somehow resurrect her own. She wasn't a criminal, Detective Morrison explained to Sarah over a crackling international phone connection. She was a broken woman who saw your son and, in her psychological state, believed she was rescuing him from some perceived danger. The false identity, the move to Mexico, it was all part of an elaborate delusion that Tommy was her nephew, orphaned and in need of her care. Sarah sat in the hotel lobby as Diego, Tommy, slept in the room upstairs. He'd been remarkably calm when she'd explained who she believed he was, almost as if some part of him had been waiting for this moment his entire life. What happens now? She asked. Legally, it's complicated. Elena died 6 months ago, he says, so there's no one to prosecute. Diego has no legal documentation. Elena never officially adopted him, and his Mexican identity was built on forged papers, but DNA results should be back tomorrow, and assuming they confirm what we already know. He comes home. If that's what he wants, Sarah, you need to prepare yourself. This boy has lived in Mexico for most of his life. He speaks Spanish better than English. His memories of his early childhood are fragmentary at best. He may not want to uproot his life again. Sarah looked toward the staircase. 2 hours ago, she'd watched Diego, Tommy, video chat with several boys from a school in Guadalajara, speaking rapid Spanish and laughing at jokes she couldn't understand. This wasn't the 3-year-old she'd lost. This was a 14-year-old stranger who happened to share her DNA and her son's memories. But when he'd seen the photo she'd carried in her wallet for 12 years, Tommy on his 3rd birthday, grinning gap-toothed over a construction-themed cake, something had shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or just the sadness of seeing what he'd lost without ever knowing he'd lost it. "Mom?" Sarah looked up to find Diego at the bottom of the stairs, hair mussed from sleep. "I keep thinking about that woman in my dreams, the one who was calling for someone." "What about her?" "I think maybe she was calling for me." The DNA results were conclusive. Diego Vasquez was Thomas Michael Patterson, kidnapped from a Costco in Phoenix 12 years, 4 months, and 6 days ago. But identity, Sarah was learning, was more complicated than genetics. "I want to come home with you," Diego told her on their last morning in Mexico. "But I also want to come back here sometimes. This is home too now." They were sitting on the beach where she'd first approached him, watching him add finishing touches to his most ambitious sand creation yet. A scale model of the resort, complete with tiny rooms and pathways. Other hotel guests had stopped to admire his work, and Sarah felt a familiar surge of pride watching strangers appreciate her son's talent. "We'll figure it out," she said. "Maybe you could spend summers here, help Senor Herrera with projects around the resort, and the rest of the year in Phoenix, if that's what you want." Diego was quiet for a long moment, smoothing the walls of his sand architecture with careful fingers. "I don't remember you," he said finally, "but I remember feeling safe, really safe, like nothing bad could ever happen. I haven't felt that way since I was little." Sarah's throat tightened. "I remember that too. I remember how you used to fall asleep on my chest, and I'd be afraid to move because I didn't want to wake you. Elena told me stories about my parents. She said they loved me very much, but they had to go away." Diego glanced at Sarah. "I think maybe she was confused about who my parents were, but she wasn't wrong about the love." "No," Sarah agreed. "She wasn't wrong about that." They sat in comfortable silence as the morning sun climbed higher, other families beginning to claim their spots on the beach. Sarah watched Diego watching them, mothers chasing toddlers, fathers building lopsided sandcastles, teenagers pretending to be too cool for family vacations while secretly enjoying every moment. "Do I have siblings?" he asked suddenly. "A sister, Emma. She's 16, and she's been waiting to meet you her whole life. What if she doesn't like me?" "She will. But even if she didn't, it wouldn't change anything. You're family now, forever, no matter what." Diego nodded solemnly, then returned to his sand creation. He was adding details now, tiny windows, miniature furniture, even small figures representing the staff and guests. It was a world in miniature, perfect and ordered and beautiful. "Will you help me remember?" he asked without looking up. "Remember what?" "Being Tommy, being your son, the good parts." Sarah reached over and touched his hand, marveling at how much larger it was than she remembered, how capable these fingers had become. "We'll remember together," she said, "and we'll make new memories too." As they prepared to leave Mexico, Sarah took one last photo of Diego's sand resort. By tomorrow, The tide would wash it away, but for now it stood as a testament to something precious that had been lost and found again. Not unchanged, but not broken either. Different, but still fundamentally whole. On the plane to Phoenix, Diego fell asleep against her shoulder, and Sarah felt that old, familiar feeling of being afraid to move, afraid to disturb the miracle of having her child close enough to protect. Outside the window, 2 countries spread below them like a map of possibility, connected by the boy who belonged to both, and would carry pieces of each wherever he went. She pulled out her phone and deleted all the age progression photos, all the false leads and dead ends that had consumed 12 years of hoping. She wouldn't need them anymore. The search was over, but the love would continue, deeper and more complex now, shaped by loss and recovery, by the woman who'd taken her son and the boy who'd found his way home, despite everything. At the Phoenix airport, Emma waited with David and Detective Morrison, holding a sign that read, "Welcome home, Diego," in both English and Spanish. When Diego saw it, he smiled, the first completely unself-conscious smile Sarah had seen from him, and she knew that whatever came next, they would figure it out together, one day at a time, building something new from the beautiful ruins of what they'd lost.